Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by showing exactly what's been going on in my own allotment, my own kitchen garden based here in Littlehampton on the south coast of the UK. I've been growing my own for over 30 years, but I still learn something new every single day. Now, coming up this week, joining me in the podding shed is Mark from Buzz into Beekeeping. We're getting a monthly update of what bees are doing and what beekeepers will be doing. Before that, we are down on the allotment where rain is still making things difficult. But before all that, let's head into the kitchen garden. Well, I'm out in the kitchen garden now, and it's one of these periods where it's not raining for a few minutes. This is one of those things that has happened this week. We've had odd breaks in the weather where we have managed just to quickly run out to the garden and just try and tackle a few items. Now, namely, the real thing we've been doing is, of course, clearing out more of the weeds that we get. But as we're clearing out the weeds and we're freeing up some space in the beds, we're starting to prepare our garden cloches. Now, our garden cloches are really going to come into their own throughout the month of March. They're just a good way of warming up the soil as well as protecting any plants under those cloches, just to get them started that little bit sooner. And as we progress throughout the month, there's going to be things like carrots and beetroot, all of which we're going to be sowing throughout this month in order to just get our garden off to a good start, get our food starting to grow. And cloches really do come into their own. Now, generally speaking, I think the worst of the cold weather is past. I'm not saying that we're not going to get any more frosts. It's certainly a possibility. We've still got to keep an eye on the weather, but at least for the moment, we can start using our cloches and get things going. Now, on that note, one of the things that I did this week was actually try and set up my diesel heater inside my greenhouse. Now, for Christmas, I was very kindly given a diesel heater from my wife. And this is something I've wanted for a while. For me, the idea behind this diesel heater is that we can just have some good, rather safe heating inside the greenhouse, which would just warm up the greenhouse and just keep any plants that we have in there warm, stop them from freezing. Now, one of the problems, of course, is that this diesel heater does need a power source, electrical power source, in order to run all the electronics. And as I've said time and time before, I've got 2 trees that I need to take out in order to get electricity run down to my sheds. And I haven't been able to take those trees out. So this was just a dummy run of the diesel heater to see, 1, if it would work, 2, how well it would work, and 3, if we can get the position just right. So I quickly ran a extension lead into my greenhouse, outdoor extension lead of course, and plumbed it all in with the exhaust running outside underneath the greenhouse so it doesn't melt anything. And I run the diesel heater. It got surprisingly hot inside the greenhouse. I was actually genuinely rather surprised how warm it was in there. It's safe to say it worked quite well. Now, what this did actually teach me in just doing this dummy run is that we need to make a few adjustments. One of the things was that how I run the exhaust, I was a little bit worried that the smoke could be going into my shed. And of course, carbon monoxide is something we don't want. So we're going to have to look at how we're going to pipe the exhaust a bit better. Secondly, I laid my diesel heater on the stones inside the greenhouse, and that worked okay, but I think actually what we could do is make a little stand for it, get it off the ground a little bit, and actually get it working in a better position that will help keep that greenhouse just a little bit warm, keep the frost free throughout the winter months. So it's worthwhile, is what I'm saying. It was well worthwhile just trying, giving it a dummy run and see what we learned from that. Now, this is going to be a project in the future, but the first thing, of course, is taking those trees down. I can't do anything until those trees come down, so it's more of a reason for me now to really start talking about getting those trees down. it's got to happen. It's got to happen. Now, something else that happened this week is I received an email from Tanya. Now, Tanya tells me she's 36 weeks pregnant. And Tanya was asking me if there was any vegetables that somebody who is heavily pregnant could grow to keep the interest going. Something easy, something tasty at the same time. And of course, the thoughts were radish, tomatoes and things like that. But I've also sort of thought about things like kale, rhubarb, beetroot. There's quite a few options, but obviously I've had no experience of being pregnant, and my wife has never been pregnant either. So I feel a little bit awkward making suggestions on things that I have no experience of. But if anybody out there has been growing their own vegetables while pregnant, then please do share any of the perfect vegetables that you found to grow while pregnant, and I would happily share those with Tanya. But one of the other things that Tanya mentioned is she shared a photo of some of her chili plants, and she noticed on those chili plants that there was some little marks, which she was wondering where they came from. Well, my first thought was it's some sort of sap-sucking insect. Spider mite was my first sort of thought. But I went out and checked on my seedlings that I keep in my kitchen, and what I noticed on there is I had a lot of green fly. Now, I'm not surprised in some ways because I had this last year. It seems to be something going on with these peat-free composts that we seem to get more green fly. Plus, indoors, it's warm, it's perfect conditions for the green fly to start to show itself. Well, what I then had to do was, of course, tackle the green fly that I had. So what I did is I got myself a little sprayer bottle into which I filled up with water, and then I just blasted all the green fly off with a jet of water. Now, as you know, I don't like killing anything, including insects. So this is probably not the best way to tackle with green fly. But if we don't tackle it now, the problem will get worse and we'll end up with more and more green fly. And they will be detrimental to our young plants. The best thing, of course, would be to encourage something like ladybirds. But that's very difficult when it's indoors in our kitchens. So for now, it's going to have to be down to what I'm doing, and we'll work on what else we can do in the future. But for now, it's working. We have tackled the green fly. I've checked on it quite a few times since, and there seems to be no more problems with green fly. So it has worked. Personally, I'm hoping that it's going to be warm enough soon that we can start getting these plants into the shed or into the greenhouse in order to encourage those, or free up more space on the indoors and start getting them hardened off, ready to go outside. Again, as I said earlier, we've got to keep a close eye on the weather to see what is happening. Now, of course, the harvests continue to happen here in the kitchen garden. Chard is something we are eating a lot of at the moment. That delicious green leaves that do really well in many salads and great for this time of year for eating healthily. Of course, lettuce and spinach that we've overwintered are going down well. One of the real heroes at the moment, however, is our purple sprouting broccoli. We're getting some really good purple sprouting broccoli at the moment, which is also going down rather well. I'm rather pleased because here we are, end of February, and we're still getting plenty of vegetables from our kitchen garden, which is very relevant as we go on into the hunger gap. Right, I'm going to head on down to the allotment and share with you what's been going on down there. In the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the Supporters Club this week. Well, if you've listened to this podcast, you know what I'm about to ask you. If you are enjoying this podcast, then please leave a rate and review on your podcast provider. It only takes you a few seconds, but it means well to us. It helps us also get more discovered by other people who might also want to learn more about how to grow their own food. Might also be looking for some inspiration at the same time. So please do rate and review. Added to that, if you are also enjoying this podcast, you want to help support the work that we do, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. For just £5 a month it costs to be a member, you get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts that give you a bit of an idea what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. But not only that, once a month you will also receive through the letterbox our monthly seed pack, and that seed pack contains a collection of seeds that I have carefully chosen to be sown in that very month. Added to that, you also get a copy of our mini newspaper, which gives you instructions on how to grow those seeds, but it also gives you the chance to log what you're doing and give you a few tick lists of things that you could also do. It's become quite a valuable tool, one that I use myself when I'm doing my own gardening. Now, as an example, this week we've been sowing some leek seeds, which is of course our seed of the month, and we've also been sowing some beetroot. So we are really getting going for this growing year in the club. If that sounds like something you would be interested in, then please head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk to find out more and sign up. Right, back to the gardening. Well, I'm here on the allotment now, and what I've noticed this week is that the evenings, it really is noticeably lighter when I come home from work. Now, while at the moment it's still not quite light enough to get to the allotment after work, it's certainly getting there. Certainly is getting there, which is exciting and is heading the right direction for what we want. Very pleased about that, as you can tell. Very pleased indeed. Now, I came down to the allotment today, and it's been another wet week. I'm sure I don't need to say that again. Everywhere is struggling at the moment. Everything's saturated. We just need a bit of dry weather for a couple of weeks. That would be great. Now, I knew there was not much that I was going to be able to do on the allotment. We are seeing lots of signs of spring. Daffodils are flowering. The rhubarb is starting to show itself. So we're certainly moving in the right direction, but a lot of it is about getting myself ready for the coming season. At the end of February is that last final bit before we enter spring. What I did this week is I just walked around, just checking on everything, clearing away any weeds, making sure that everything was in good order. One of the things I noticed is that my pile of hazel sticks seems to be disturbed. Now, I don't think I've lost any hazel sticks, but I did see on our Facebook group for the allotment the other day that somebody was asking whether or not our allotment shop is going to be selling any hazel sticks anytime soon. The response on the group was that no, there's no plans at the moment, but that could change. So it does make me wonder if somebody's been eyeing up my hazel sticks, shall we say. It doesn't look like I've lost any. It doesn't look too bad, but at the same time, it is a bit of a concern, shall we say, that somebody is rummaging through my stuff. They've not cost me anything other than work, because I do grow my hazel sticks here on the allotment. Now, the other major thing that I have been doing is I brought a bale of straw. Well, actually, I bought a few bales of straw, and I've gone around my garlic and my onions, just mulching those with some straw. Now, this is the time of year where mulching is starting to be needed. If we can lock in that moisture now while it's still wet, it should keep that moisture in the soil all the way through the spring and into the summer. In theory. So I got a load of straw, and I've placed that down over my garlic, just protecting that soil, giving them a good chance to lock in that moisture. But I'm also, something that we did last year, started up another straw bale bed. Now, last year I started a straw bale bed, which was pretty successful, I've got to say, just by placing a few straw bales in a bed that I have free. It hasn't had any organic matter added to it yet. So I've placed the straw bales on that. We've got to spend the next few weeks conditioning the straw bales, which is a case of adding water on a daily basis just to soak up all that rainwater, should do it, but also adding urea or a high nitrogen feed. Now, what it does is it creates a nutritious growing media in the straw, so we can plant many of our plants straight into the straw, and it will be rather successful. I've done this last year in a small area. It worked really quite well, actually, got to say, and I'm looking to carry it on this year. Now I use urea as the conditioning fertiliser. It's a very high nitrogen, and every day, or every other day, we have to add a certain quantity of urea to the mix to start these straw bales off. What will then happen is those straw bales will warm up as the breaking down process starts to begin, and then as it breaks down, as it does its condition, water is also trapped in the straw. And then come the right time of year, which could be April at this rate, we can then start planting our plants into that straw. Just simply by pushing apart the straw, pushing our plant in, giving it good water, and the plants grow quite strongly. Very good method, I've got to say. It isn't as easy as just planting in the soil, of course, but it does turn some problem areas into a bit of a better area. And also, I've noticed when I've done straw bale gardening, it needs less weeding. Now, the current sort of thinking is that straw bales, when used in straw bale gardening, will last for a good couple of years. So we get a couple of years out of these straw bales, and then we'll take the straw apart and we'll use that, because at this point it would have rotted down to a rather pleasant compost. We'll just place that over the bed that it's already existed on to start growing into that in the third year. So it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to reduce the weeding that we have to do, is the theory. Hopefully reduce the amount of couch grass that we get. It's just a very good way of growing if you do want to look at this. A lot of reports on it, a lot of success. I've done it a few times now. Took me a while, I found, to get the conditioning right. The biggest problem was I was using chicken manure pellets, which just were not high enough in nitrogen, and we can buy urea from Amazon quite easily. Now, in all honesty, what we need here on the allotment, and I mentioned this earlier, is just a couple of weeks of dry weather. Let the soil dry out enough that we can really start working on it and start bringing it back into a good working order. I don't think it's going to happen just yet, but we are literally on the cusp of the end of winter, which means spring is just around the corner, and that means hopefully everything is going to start springing back into life. The allotment is going to come back together, and I am really excited for it. Right, it is now time to head back to the podding shed. In the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the kitchen this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef's got with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
But as always, you will find this week's recipe up on the website at theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. But here we are in late winter, and it's very much about comfort food as well as vegetables that we have available for us in the garden. This week it's a cheesy leek, kale and potato bake. Very simple dish, but just warming and perfect for a weekend meal after a day on the plot. Somewhere between a gratin and a veg-packed cottage pie. Great way to use the leeks that we have been sowing this month as well. So what do we need? 3 medium potatoes, thinly sliced, 2 leeks that have been sliced, 2 large handfuls of kale which have been chopped, 1 large onion sliced, 1 clove of garlic which we've crushed, 150 ml of vegetable stock, 100 ml of milk or cream, 100 grams of grated cheddar, and a tablespoon of butter or oil, plus a bit of salt and pepper, and possibly even a bit of nutmeg. First of all, we preheat the oven to gas mark 4, and then in a pan we gently fry the onion, garlic and leeks in butter or oil until nice and soft. We then add the kale and cook until it wilts, and then we pour in the stock and the milk or cream depending on what you are using. Season well with plenty of salt and pepper and simmer for 5 minutes. And then in a baking dish, we lay out the sliced potatoes and we pour over the leek and kale mixture, scatter over with cheese, and then we bake that for 35 to 40 minutes until the potatoes are nice and tender and the top is nice and golden. This is a great recipe to use those vegetables that are available in the garden right now and using those potatoes from storage, which are certainly very welcome through this winter period. It's absolutely delicious, and go give it a try and let me know how you get on. Well, next, I'm joined by Mark from Buzz into Beekeeping.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for having me back. Great to be here. Well, like you sort of mentioned, I think it would be great to give people an idea of what sort of insight into beekeeping and what they might be doing this time of year, what's involved with beekeeping at this time of year. Obviously there's kind of two big parts to beekeeping. There's the bees and there's the beekeepers. From the bees' point of view, they're obviously sort of trying to make sure they get through winter. This obviously is still pretty cold at the moment, this time of year. Inside the hive, the colonies would be shrunk down to quite small, just a few thousand bees and the queen, and they'll be in a sort of rugby ball shape cluster, sort of hunkered together, a bit like penguins on the ice in Antarctica, all kind of using their bodies to keep warm and keep each other warm and safe. And all the time through winter, they're eating honey to use as energy to then use their wing muscles to generate heat to keep warm. And that's kind of the main reason why bees produce honey, is to get them through the winter. So they will be eating their honey stores through the winter and using that energy to keep warm. But we do get a few sort of slightly warmer days at the moment, which is really nice to see. And the bees take advantage of that as well. As soon as the air temperature gets to sort of 8-10 degrees, you will start to see bees flying. They'll start to leave the hive. A couple of reasons they'll do that. One of the biggest ones is they do these little cleansing flights. So obviously they've been in the hive all winter, eating honey and things, and they don't normally go to the loo in their hives. So they like to fly off and then go and do a poo and then come back in. So so you do notice sometimes around the hive that there are these tiny little brown specks sort of arriving when the bees do start flying, and that's just them doing cleansing flights. It's one of the things they're doing. But obviously, the other thing is to start bringing in food. With obviously the weather changing and starting to have those sort of small shoots of spring coming, the queen knows this and she starts to lay eggs so that there's more bees ready to take advantage of the spring as that happens. And obviously all these little bees that have been, these eggs that have been hatched, they will need feeding. Pollen is a really important source of protein for bees. So when the bees do start flying, one of their primary goals is to find pollen. So anything that starts flowering, crocuses, there's a bit of hawthorn around, I think. There's a few little things starting to shoot at the moment. And the bees, if it's warm enough, will be collecting pollen from those to bring back and feed baby bees. So there's a lot going on inside the hive, even though from the outside, you don't see a lot, but there's a lot going on.
I guess that's one of the reasons why we need lots of early flowering plants at this time of year, such as daffodils and things like that, to feed those bees.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. So as from a gardening point of view and a growing point of view, anything that does have those early flowers, really, really helps bees and helps give them that kind of good start early in the spring. Definitely. And also if they haven't got enough stores through the winter, then having that forage available will help them get through as well. So absolutely, anything that gardeners and growers can do to help the bees, that'd be great.
Fantastic. So basically bees are just, I guess what you're saying is they're coming through the winter, coming out of their hibernation, and they're starting to get warmed up.
Definitely, yeah. Although they don't actually hibernate, so they stay awake all winter, whereas other bees, bumblebees and other sort of solitary bees do hibernate, but the honeybees don't, and that's what differentiates them from the other bees. So that's why they make the honey, so that they can eat that through the winter to generate the heat and keep warm. Basically, they are sort of, the colony is starting to sort of wake up and start to thrive again, and the queen, who's sort of the engine in there, is starting to get going and starting to lay eggs, and then they will need, and then soon, 3 weeks it takes from an egg being laid to a worker bee hatching. So she's hoping that in 3 weeks time the temperatures will be that much warmer. There'll be that much more forage around, and these bees can start going out and collecting and things. So, and then the colony will start to grow as quick as possible. So yeah, there's loads going on inside the hive. Such an important time of year, because from a beekeeping point of view, and I've fallen foul of this myself in recent years, is you get to sort of this time of year, you kind of seeing what's going on and it all looks good. And then in a few weeks' time, this happened to me last year actually, went back to check and the colony had died out because they'd just run out of food. There'd been another cold spell, sort of end of Feb, beginning of March. And the bees had kind of obviously trying to keep warm, used up the rest of their stores, run out, and there wasn't enough forage around for them. They couldn't fly, it was too cold. And yeah, lost a colony like that. So it is a really sort of important time of year just to make sure that the bees have got stuff. So yeah, from the beekeeping point of view, obviously we can't get hands-on with the bees at the moment because you don't want to open up the hive and expose them to winter. But we can have a look and see what's going on, and you can learn a lot as well just from seeing the bees coming in and out of the hive. So if there's a warm day and you do notice some bees flying, pop down, spend a few minutes having a look and seeing what's coming in or going out. You will see bees sort of doing sort of loops near the hive, and that's probably bees that are on their first flight ever. So they're coming out of the hive for the first time, having a look around, trying to get their bearings, work out where they are. And you'll see other bees that will come out and they'll fly off and fly back. And hopefully when they're flying back, you might see some pollen on their legs. So you know that they're collecting food. If they're bringing pollen into the hive, then you know that there's an indication that the queen's healthy and she's laying and there's new bees coming. So there's a lot you can learn without even opening the hive, just by having a look and seeing what's happening around the entrance of the hive. And the other, if you do have a look inside, what a lot of beekeepers do through the winter is above, sort of under the roof, but above the bees in the hive is a space, and you can have like some icing, fondant icing in there, so that if the bees do run out of their stores, they have this as a little backup. So you can have a quick check under the roof and see, if they've eaten that, or if there's any left, if you need to add a bit more. If there isn't any there, you can always add a bit now, just to give them that sort of safety net in case they need it going forward. But other than that, in terms of being hands-on with the bees from a beekeeping point of view, there's not a lot to do with them directly. But we want to be ready for spring. Spring's coming. The colonies should start to expand really quickly. They're going to need more space. So we just need to make sure that we've got supers, which are the boxes which go on top of the brood box, and supers with frames ready for the bees to expand into once the colony expands. So it's important to give them the space as they're expanding, give them that space to expand into. If a colony of bees sort of outgrow the space that they've got, then that's a time when they will consider swarming, which is generally what beekeepers try to avoid. And that's swarming is when bees, sort of some of the bees will take the queen and fly off and start a new colony somewhere else, leaving behind a big chunk of the house bees and some almost ready new queens to carry on that colony. So that's how they reproduce the number of colonies in the wild. But from a beekeeping point of view, you don't really want them to swarm, because you then you're reducing the strength of your colony, and you won't then produce as much honey in the summer if your bees do swarm. And obviously you lose half your swarm, then that they might swarm and end up causing a nuisance in your neighbours or your chimney or somewhere like that. So ideally we don't want them to swarm. So give them lots of space in the spring, so that as the colony is expanding, the queen goes into this kind of mode where she's laying up to 2,000 eggs a day, and give them the space to grow into. So it's an important time for beekeepers just to get ready for the season coming. I think probably similar to growers as well.
Oh yes, it's certainly about getting ready for the season ahead. Thanks so much, Mark, for joining in. If anybody does want to get into beekeeping, check out Mark's website, Buzz Into Beekeeping. We're going to be doing more on this over the coming months, and I'm hoping to get a year's worth of content from Mark on this. Now, before we pack up tonight, I do have a few comments to go through because I've missed the last couple of weeks. Recently, I've spoken about how my chicken run is very, very muddy. And Lynn has came back and suggested that placing wooden pallets down in the chicken run reduces the wet areas that chickens walk on and raises them up higher, which is a good idea. It's something that I might think of doing. Added to that, Philip has also said, I had the same issues with mud in the chicken run last winter. We added some big sacks of wood chip and it hasn't been a problem this year. I wouldn't look back. The wood has broken down, so I may need to add another sack next year. I did use a brand catering specific for chicken runs, as I believe wood bark can hunger funguses that affect chickens. Love the podcasts, Phil. Great idea there. Great idea indeed. Last week, Dave said instead of lowering the lights, talking about the grow lights, I always put something underneath the plants to get them higher, like a book or something. Much easier. Interesting indeed. Lynn has also said, great podcast as usual. Just wanted to ask, have you tried seed snares as an alternative method for sowing seeds? Thought I might give it a go. I'll let you know how it goes. That's something I might do next week. I've also had a message come in from MB-IP. Love each episode, and as a member of the Supporters Club, I'm loving the improved magazine. Between the magazine and the free seeds, I'll have Brussels this winter. I know it's already jam-packed with advice, but I could do with some help on when to harvest things at their best. Thanks. That's something I'm looking into, how we can explain how to harvest things at their best. And then finally, Lucy DeGraff Johnson says that thanks for the in-depth section on celery. I'm growing celery for the first time this year and I've learned lots. I even paused your podcast to go and give my seedlings some extra water based on your advice. They do love the water. Well, I think that is about it for this week. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then please do rate and review, just like all those rate and reviewers have done. It really does actually help shape the podcast. Also, if you've enjoyed this podcast and want to help support us, then please become a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. Just £5 a month. Details on that at veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. If you want to get in touch, you can of course go through the website. You can leave a comment on the end of a blog post, or you can leave a voicemail. And of course, you can email me, richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk, or of course, you can find me on social media. Please do give us a follow and a like and all that jazz. We will be back again next time, so until then, please take care.